And I'll be telling you a little bit more about that as this presentation goes on. But apparently there are a lot of people out here who have never been to a state park. So, but the good news is, oops, and now it is not advancing. How do I advance? Because we were advancing perfectly earlier. What we did earlier. Oh, and now it's going to blow through all of my slides, I'm sure. Okay, well, the good news is there are 89 different state parks across Texas, and actually a brand new one is going to be opening next year. Palo Pinto Mountains will be opening up next year. Okay. So Texas Parks and Wildlife, for state parks, they've divided state parks into 6 different regions. And right now, ooh, I'm suddenly getting very loud. Okay, we are in Region 4. So we're at Southeast Texas is known as Region 4 for Texas state parks. So we've got 6 different regions across the state. So my plan for this evening is to give you a little bit of an overview of the Cultural Resources Program, which is what I'm a part of. This is the program that deals with archaeology in state parks. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the work that's been going on in our local region, and then I'm going to tell you about our 100-year anniversary celebrations, which are coming up next year. So I guess the big question is, why do Texas state parks even bother with cultural resources? Well, it's actually part of our mission. So the mission of Texas Parks and Wildlife is to manage and conserve the natural and cultural resources of Texas and to provide hunting, fishing, and outdoor recreation opportunities for the use and enjoyment of present and future generations. So we've got the preservation of cultural resources right there in the first part of our mission, which is pretty fabulous for people like me. So within Texas parks, or within state parks, we've got the Cultural Resources Program. And so our aim is to advance the stewardship and history and prehistory in Texas state parks. And we do this through research. We help to guide the regulatory process because we still have to follow all of the state rules. We ensure care for archaeological sites, and we help to educate visitors and also park employees about the importance of cultural resources. So this is an org chart, and if you look, I am right here in Region 4. So we've got the archaeological collections people, we've got archaeological services, which is a team that goes out and helps the archaeologists in the parks. We've got curatorial services, we've got preservation services, and then we've got people like me who are the cultural resources coordinators. And if you've noticed, we've actually got a job opening. So if you know of anybody who is a preservation specialist and is looking for a job, we have been looking for one for a while to help out our team lead of David Vesica. So if you were to go to Austin, we actually have all of our archaeological collections in storage, and people can visit them, parks can borrow artifacts, and we have a really decent research library for people to research more about the collections that we've got. We've got some pretty good recordings of oral histories. And because a lot of our parks were built by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 30s and 40s, we've got all the records relating to the construction of the parks. So the survey team are 4 people that come out and help with excavations in different parks. So if I come across a project that I can't handle by myself, I can call them in to assist me. You may have met the lead, Robin Barnes, at some of these archaeological conferences because she attends a lot of those. So they're wonderful because it's 4 very well-trained people that can come and help me out. And last year they came and helped me out at Martin Dyes because I had a tree planting program. And the park wanted to plant a bunch of trees where there were known archaeological sites. So we went out and dug shovel tests where every single tree was going to go. And we were able to avoid cultural resources that way with their help. We've also got curatorial services. Those are the people that care for the interpretive object collections in parks. So if you were to go to somewhere like the Sauer Beckman Farm, you know how there's a lot of artifacts on display and in use in the buildings. They're the ones that take care of all of that. And they've also got a storage facility, which is pretty cool to go and visit as well. And preservation services, the way it was explained to me is that archaeological stuff, we're the archaeologists, we're the ones that handle things under the ground, and preservation services are the ones that handle the stuff above ground. And so here's 2 examples actually in this region. So there's the Raven Lodge from Huntsville State Park, and then a reconstruction or a commemorative version of Mission Tejas. And these were both built in the 30s. And so because they were built by the Civilian Conservation Corps, which was one of these make work projects in the 30s, we take special care of those buildings. And so Preservation Services takes the lead on things like that. And then we've got people like me, the cultural resources coordinators. So anytime a state park wants to build something that's going to disturb the ground, or any kind of project actually, they do what's called a project review process. And I'm one of the people on the list that gets to take a look at the project and see if it's going to affect any kind of cultural resources. So we've also got interpretive services that look at the projects. We've got the natural resource people that look at the projects, and everyone gets to have some input on them. So a large part of my job is looking at these project reviews. So recently I've been looking at Brazos Bend. They're going to be installing a fiber optic line, and it's going to be a ridiculously long fiber optic line, but it will really help out internet services in the park. But it's going to go fairly close to some known archaeological sites. So I've had some discussions with the superintendent and the people who are actually running the project, and we figured out a way so that everything will be protected, which is very satisfying when we can make everybody happy at the same time. So I do a lot of work with the superintendents. I write resource management plans. I monitor archaeological sites. So a lot of what I do is going back out and actually making sure things haven't been damaged accidentally or eroding or exposed by low water, things like that, or damaged by graffiti. So I'm an archaeologist, but then I do help preservation services at times when they need help with their historic structures. And I also do research with historic records, and I help out interpretation. And I'm realizing that some of my slides are going to be always covered up by this little black line, and I apologize for that. The good news is I pretty much know what I wrote. Okay, so here's Region 4. And I'm thinking you will probably recognize most of these parks. And there's one on here that you've probably never heard of because it's not actually a park yet. And that's Davis Hill. And we'll talk about that one a little bit later. But you can see I'm based out of Sheldon Lake, which is on the east side of Houston. So it's to get all the way to Mission Tejas up by Lufkin, that's a fair drive. So I've got a pretty decent sized region to deal with, but I feel worse for the poor people in West Texas because they do a lot of driving to get to their sites. So I'm going to start off and talk a little bit about Mission Tejas. Has anyone visited Mission Tejas at all? It's right by Caddo Mounds. It's well worth it. It's a little park, and it's actually got elevation on their trails. So if you want to hike somewhere where you actually have to go up and down, this is the place to go. And it's got a variety of cultural resources. So what I've got a picture on the left, that's actually part of the Camino Real. They've got traces of the Camino Real within the park. And so they've done some interpretation of that. And then and this is where things get entertaining, the commemoration of what the people in the 1930s thought a Spanish mission from the 1700s might have looked like. So this is one of these things where you can't even say it's a replica because it's sort of, it was someone's idea of what they thought a mission should look like, but it's a pretty cool building in its own right. And it's open all the time. You can go and see it. And then this is a picture of the people that actually built the park. And if you notice, there's a little group of people who are African-American. It was one of the few places in this part of Texas that actually had an African-American core that helped to build the parks. And then there's this thing on the right-hand side, and we're still confused about what it is. It was built by the CCC, and people refer to it as the CCC bathtub. So basically, it's a spring coming out of the ground, and there's a little pool, and it's lined with rocks. But is it really a bathtub? We're kind of confused by that because it's about a mile away from where the CCC would have been living. Like, would you really go on a mile-long hike to go and sit in a spring? Like, I don't, we're still discussing how we can interpret this properly because we don't want to mislead people. So it's one of these interesting things that kind of appears in the park, and now we get to talk about it. And nobody has actually excavated it out. We're all sort of apprehensive about doing that part. So if you go to Mission Tejas, I would definitely go and check it out and let me know what you think. So as I was preparing this presentation, I realized a lot of my slides were incredibly boring. Like, they're archaeological pictures. So this is actually a picture that's supposed to show where they're going to build a new campsite in Mission Tejas. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is awful. Like, it means something to me, but for you, you're probably like, that's great, Eleanor, why'd you pick this one? And I made some comment on Facebook about, oh my goodness, all my pictures are boring. And my cousin in Scotland decided to edit this picture for me. And so he came up with this. And he figured this would draw you in a whole lot more. So yeah, here's some wildlife in Mission Tejas. So that's supposed to be a shark flying through the air, an elephant, and a tiger, because that's so Southeast Texas. Okay, and then we're going to move on to Fort Boggy, which is one of these parks that's a little bit smaller, and I think it's kind of overlooked at times. But if you go and check it out, it is really cool. So Fort Boggy was apparently it was a fort that was built during the Civil War. And so if you look at the park, not all of it is accessible right now. The northern part of the park, you can't visit it at the moment. However, the people who build trails are working on a plan to build trails. And so they're going to pretty much like triple the amount of trails that are available in this park. Now, unfortunately, they seem to be aiming for every known archaeological site. So I've had some discussions with them, and we're still going to have to figure out a plan so that we can make everybody happy for these trails. Now, this marker that is present in the park, there's rumors that it's on the marker. It says that this is the site of Fort Boggy. Well, research now shows that Fort Boggy itself might have actually been outside of the park boundaries. And there's a rumor that back in 1930, whatever, when they were installing this marker, it was on the back of a vehicle that got stuck in the mud. And it got stuck so badly that they just ended up dumping out the marker and then driving off. So really, this marker may not be the most accurate of markers that we have. But more research is needed, so there's definitely possibilities. Now, if you go and visit the park, you can actually see or they have these really cool little cabins that you can rent. And they've got beds and I think a coffee maker. They don't have restrooms, unfortunately, but the restrooms are very close by. But they've got fire pits and a nice big deck and screened in shelters. So it'll be a wonderful place to go and spend the weekend. And they're very popular. They book up quite quickly. And the picture in the middle with the shovel, that was another fiber optic line that they're going to be putting in. So I went and dug my shovel tests and didn't find anything. And so the project is going to continue. So moving over to East Texas near Jasper is a park known as Martin Dies Jr. State Park. And it's actually on land that is owned by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And the superintendent has a whole lot of different ideas for development. So I've been kept fairly busy heading out there and helping them out. So they're going to be putting in amphitheaters. They want to fix a breakwater that's kind of eroding away, and they want to repurpose their group use. It was kind of like a group use hall, and they want to repurpose that into more of a store and museum and have interpretive exhibits. So it'll be very interesting to see what they come up with. I get to sit and review some of the interpretive panels. So it's going to be an interesting time in the next year or so. Moving over to Lake Livingston, this one's actually been fairly quiet. They've had some problems with their water lines. So at times they don't have running water. So they've closed the park. However, there is a plan to fix all of that. So they'll be back open, and it's a very popular place for people from Houston to go boating as well. What's interesting is apparently in the lake there's a shipwreck, but it's one of these things where it sounds better on paper than in real life. So apparently the shipwreck is pretty much a bunch of timbers in the water that gets exposed when the water is very low. And in fact, it's in such poor condition, they're not even sure what kind of ship it was. But the whole fact that there is a shipwreck just sounds really neat. Moving over to Huntsville, has anyone been to Huntsville? Because it's super close. Yeah, that's a fabulous park, and it's another one of the CCC era parks. So one of my predecessors, it was Ruth Matthews. Did any of you all work with Ruth? Because I know she often got HAS volunteers to come out and help her on projects. One of the things that she worked on was helping to, or when they were deciding to fix the dam on the other side of the lake. The thing is, the access road that leads to the dam has these CCC era culverts. So we had to figure out a way to protect them. So, because once you start running lots of heavy equipment over it, it's just going to shake it into little pieces. So they came up with a plan to put these bridges on. And about a year ago, they installed these bridges, these wooden bridges, and they help to spread out the load. And if you look, they don't actually touch the bridge, or they don't touch the culvert themselves. So it's a good way to protect these culverts from any kind of damage. They've been doing a lot of work on the boathouse that was also built by the CCC. And in fact, they've done a lot of work on that. And I think it's pretty much open at this point. But one of the interesting things that they found when they were doing all the work on the boathouse was they exposed this wall, and it's actually a CCC era wall that used to be the margin of the lake, and everyone had kind of forgotten about it, and they had built it up and covered it over with dirt. And so it was a real surprise when people came out with backhoes to do some work, and then suddenly they found this wall. But if you go back to the original plans, it actually shows up. And so people had just, forgotten to take a really good look at the plans, because otherwise they would have realized that this was here. So this has been covered back up again on this side. The wall is actually on both sides of the boathouse. So they've uncovered it on the other side, and they're going to use it for interpretive purposes. So they'll be able to talk about some of the construction of the CCC era. So it's an interesting way to have a discovery be talked about a lot more. And then moving over to Lake Somerville, that's also a Corps of Engineers property that Texas Parks and Wildlife leases from them. This is a site, or this is a park that has a lot of archaeological sites across it. And they've had to deal a lot with looters, people coming in helping themselves, unfortunately. So they spend a lot of their time educating people and trying to stop people from helping themselves as when things are exposed. We've, because of the drought in the summer, the lake level has dropped a lot. However, it seems like things have been going well and they haven't had to deal with a lot of looters this year. They do have plans to build some new parking lots. So, but to assist, there's one area where that gets very popular in certain fishing seasons. And so there's a plan to build a few more parking lots, just gravel ones, to help so that people aren't parking on the road and it's a little bit safer for everyone. So I've been going out and doing some shovel testing for things like that. And because it's a Corps-owned park, I have to coordinate with the Corps of Engineers. Now, Davis Hill is in Liberty County, and this actually isn't a state park yet. There's an ambitious plan to actually start opening new state parks every couple of years. There's a real push to develop more of them. Unfortunately, Davis Hill is not the next one on the list. There's a couple more ahead of us. So probably in about 12 or 14 years, we're going to have a new state park in this area. And it's going to be fairly easily accessible from Houston. So I get the feeling it's going to be quite popular. They're still working on getting a little bit more land just to make the access to the property a bit easier. But there's apparently remains of a plantation on it. There's some historic graffiti in the riverbed. So I think there's a lot of cool interpretive possibilities with this property. And the whole fact that it's so close to Houston, I think it's going to be very popular. So keep that in the back of your mind. In about 14 years, we'll have a whole new park. But now that I'm realizing there's a lot of things that have to happen before a park actually comes into being. Village Creek is near Lumberton. And this is one of our more eastern state parks. It was badly hit during Harvey, but it has recovered quite well. And it's also popular because it's got obviously a creek going through it. And I've been out there doing some work, helping them out with some of their hiking trails because they're changing. Some of their hiking trails have flooded over time, and so they just need to reroute them a little bit. It's a very nice little park. It's very close to Lumberton, or it's very close to a town. So it's one of these ones that's right butting up against a town. So it's very easy to access. And then if you've forgotten something, it's very easy to run into town. Stephen F. Austin is, obviously the one, yay, it's right close to San Felipe de Austin. It's a mile away. So this state park is in the bottomlands, though, so it's not as archaeologically interesting as, say, Stephen F. Austin or San Felipe de Austin, where there was actually the town. This was the bottomlands where people were farming and had their garden plots. However, we've got some really interesting vegetation there, and we've got the Brazos River, which is ridiculously active. And I'll be out at Stephen F. Austin State Park actually next week discussing one area that is eroding quite badly, and we're going to have to move a trail a little bit to make it safer for people. And then Sheldon Lake is right in Houston, and this is where the regional office is based out of. So this is the office I work out of, right on the edge of Sheldon Lake State Park. This is a day use only park, so you can't actually camp overnight. but they do a lot of education there, a lot of environmental education. They have tons of school groups coming in. They do a lot of fishing programs. They used to have a fishing stock tanks where they were actually like a fish hatchery, although that's closed down now. And then they've also gained some property now nearby, which is actually a fairly untouched post-oak savanna. So the natural resources people are very excited about this because it's in better shape than you would think. Most of the park had been covered by rice fields, which tends to destroy everything archaeologically and is pretty rough on the vegetation, obviously, as well. But this one area in the northern part of the park has been untouched. And so there's a lot of cool restoration ideas that people are coming up with. And Sea Rim State Park, this was another one that was hit by hurricanes a number of years ago, but has recovered quite well. They also are suffering from very low water levels right now. And I've been working on some drainage projects to help with the wetlands. Our natural resources coordinator was concerned that one of the wetlands was draining a little bit too much and it was being damaged. So he wants to change some of the routes of the water. And so I've been helping out with that. I had to get special historic resources clearance from the Texas Historical Commission for this project. And in the letter that came back, they said I needed to watch out for pieces of shipwrecks and Spanish gold. And I thought, that is the best clearance letter I have ever gotten in my life. And so I was super excited and, ran around the office and showed everybody. And now everybody's expecting remains of pirates. And I'm like, no, this it's a really low likelihood that we're going to find anything, but hey, a person can hope. And then Brazos Bend, which is kind of the jewel in the crown. This is the big park for our area and the one that gets a lot of attention and a lot of use. I've been doing a lot of work out there because they have been undergoing a very large drainage project where they're changing the drainage, some of the drainages, because at times, during hurricanes and heavy rainfalls, there's some flooding that happens. And these projects are supposed to help with that. And so they've been pulling out a lot of the old water control structures from the 60s and 70s and reshaping things. So hopefully, this has been a long project. It's been about 1.5 years of construction, and it's finally almost at the end. So I have high hopes. And so there is an archaeological site nearby one of them. And so they've done a lot of work to help and protect that. And I think we've got a plan that will will actually be effective, but we'll see. And then finally, Galveston Island. I don't know if you've been to see Galveston Island lately, but the beachside has recently reopened. They have spent quite a bit of time and money fixing up the beachside, and it is fantastic. They've got new restrooms with nice showers. They've got camping tent platforms. They've got these really neat group use shelters that you can rent out. These little shelters, those are for RVs to come because everybody needs shade at least at some point. They've really revamped their store, and they've got a brand new headquarters building. So the idea is that you could come to Galveston Island and then basically come to the park and have everything you need. So there's vendors that will rent you kayaks and fishing equipment. You can rent a tent. They've got the glamping tents that they're trying out. And then there's vendors that are selling food. So supposedly you could actually, just show up with almost nothing and then be perfectly comfortable. So this opened up at the beginning of the summer, and it's been very popular. So I don't know if you've heard, we have a brand new executive director of Texas Parks and Wildlife. A man named David Yoskovitz started this week, actually. Carter Smith is retiring at the end of the year. And so this new executive director, Dr. Yoskovitz, will step in and take over. And he's spent a lot of time in Texas. He's an economist by his background and also a scientist. And he comes from University of Texas at Corpus Christi, where he was in charge of the Heart Institute, which was a scientific research institute. So we're all very excited to see what he's going to do. And the poor man is going to be jumping in with both feet with the new legislative session starting up. So the big thing that we are all excited about is that state parks are 100 years old next year. And so there are a lot of plans to try and celebrate this. So you know how a lot of the state parks do first day hikes where they want people to come out on New Year's Day and go for a hike? Well, pretty much every park is going to be doing something like that, a hike or a kayak or some kind of special way to start off the new year right. And each park should be having some kind of their own celebration. I know Brazos Bend is got one planned for, I think the end of May. They're going to be having a festival that they would love you to come and attend if you have the time. But this just got released today. I was trying to figure out a way where I could mention the merchandise without mentioning the merchandise, but they released it on social media. So, okay, I can talk about it. They finally have come up with a Texas Parks passport, and they have stamps for every single state park, and they're all different. There was one man in Austin who has designed a different rubber stamp for every single state park, which I think is pretty cool. You can buy the book, get the stamp, and go on. One of the things that I can't wait to buy is this thing, the scratch off map. So basically it's one of these things where whatever park you visited, you can kind of scrape it off, and hopefully eventually you will uncover the entire map. And this will retail for about $15 from what I've seen. They've got, of course, they've got mugs and they've got patches. And you'll also notice that staff will be wearing a special pin, state park staff, throughout the year. So I'm interested to see. I had heard something about a bandana, which I'm also interested in, but I have not seen that. And this is supposedly available in stores now, in park stores now, or you can order it online. So we shall see how all that goes. Another cool thing to announce is a partnership with HEB. They were extremely generous and have donated $1 million to Texas state parks to help with their projects. And this is huge. And this is really wonderful. So you will likely be seeing park staff at times in HEBs. You'll see people with alligators and little tables talking about state parks and all the different programs and things. So keep an eye open for that. And also to celebrate, there is an art exhibition called The Art of Texas State Parks. Now, this is where they, for the last couple of years, they have sent out artists to all the different state parks. And so each state park actually has, a painting that was created. And it's all different artists, so it's all very different styles. And they had an exhibit of this in Houston, back in the fall, and I got to see some of the paintings. I didn't get to see all of the paintings, but there's going to be a traveling exhibit going around. And so I think in February, it will be at the Bullock Museum. And then in the summer, they're going to have all the paintings at the Museum of Natural Sciences. So keep an eye out for that, because that'll be something to see. And it's interesting because in the exhibit, there's some paintings that are actually from what are now state historic sites. And the one from Barrington is so good, we can actually identify the employees and oxen. Like we know the oxen by name. So someone did a really nice job of that one. The one in the corner is supposed to be Galveston. And then the one with the bird is actually Fort Boggy. So there's also a painting of the battleship. And then I think they're also for sale. And a book of all the paintings has just come out. And so that's available for sale as well. So that's pretty much, I blew through a bunch of different things, but it's a busy time to be in state parks. Do you have any questions of anything I was saying? Yes.
Where is that new state park?
It's in Liberty County. So it's northeast of Houston. Pardon me? I think so. Yeah, it's tucked away a little bit. There's nowhere where you can't really visit it right now. Yeah. It's I'm trying to figure out what town it would even be by. There is a housing subdivision that's nearby, but that is it was not successful, I guess. And so people are slowly moving away from it. Which will help with access, but it's I think the park, they still need to access a little bit more land before they can really get going on this state park. Yes.
Okay, you said it's the 100th anniversary.
100th anniversary, yes.
What was the state?
It was okay. I'm so glad you guys didn't call me out on this, because there's a lot of people that think there are other state parks that are older than 100 years, but they're going with Mother Neff. That Mother Neff donated land 100 years ago to create what was the first state park. And I can even read the official thing that I am supposed to say about the first state parks. If you would like that, I can do that for you. Oh, where is Mother Neff? Does anybody know? I have not been to that one.
The name is familiar.
Yeah, Pat Neff did not. In the Waco area. Okay, so I will. The official word is many of Texas's first state-owned parks were sites with significance to the Texas Revolution. Of the parks managed by the Texas State Park System today, some of the earliest are Abilene, Caddo Lake, Palo Duro, Mother Neff, Davis Mountains, and Meridian. Mother Neff State Park, a gift from Governor Pat Neff's mother, is sometimes called the mother of Texas state parks. So there you go. That is the official word. Yes, Sarah.
I have a question. Eleanor, since you brought it up,
Yeah.
could you tell us a little bit about the current state of the battleship?
Oh, the battleship. Okay. I actually have some slides for you. Oops. Oh, no. I have just screwed things up. Okay. Ooh, did I ever screw things up? Let's see if I can. Okay, help. I got enthusiastic and then I have clicked things. No, I want to go to the next slide and I have blown it up really big. So how do I get going? No. I was using the mouse and now it's on hand and I need to get it to pointer because I've got it too big. Basically, I got to go and check out the battleship a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, see, I did something weird with the wheel and oh, there we go. Okay, yep. Awesome.
Working now.
Oh, well, now I'll really show you everything.
Okay. We can get it.
Anyway, so the Battleship Texas is in dry dock. And if you ever get a chance to go and see it, oh my goodness, it is bigger than you can even imagine. I got to spend about 20 minutes, half an hour walking around the outside of it. And it is amazing. They are moving right along with progress for that. So one of the things that they did in order to get it to float or so that they could take it into the dry dock is they pumped it full of this expanding foam. And now they have to get all the foam out. And so they have the big thing that's missing there. That was a blister tank that was put on the outside. And so they've removed the blister tank and they've removed all the foam that was in the blister tanks. And then now that they have to go around to the other side, and I'm sure they're well along with doing stuff on the other side. Notice how it's kind of dented. That's actually from the force of the water that has dented it. So that's incredible. And then the picture with all the little numbers on it, that's actually measurements of how thick the hull is in fractions of an inch. So they have gone through and figured out exactly how thick it is. I know they're realizing that the coating that they put on in the late 80s has held up really well on the outside, but now the battleship is rusting from the inside. And so you see how the blister tanks or the blister tank is removed, there should be these supports, but the supports were all corroded. And so when they were blasting out the foam using high pressure water, a lot of this rusted away came off as well.
By the way, the blisters that she's talking about on battleships are torpedo blisters. And what it was is it left a void area so the torpedo would explode out here and blow away the blister, but then leave intact, hopefully, or at least minimize the damage to the interior wall, which would be down in your fuel tanks, your engineering spaces, and oh, by the way, where they store all the munitions. So that's called a torpedo blister. And they did keep them intact, just like Eleanor said, all the patches over there, if I recall on that, they had all kind of utilities that they were running from the shore in order for lighting, air conditioning, and the like that was down underneath. And again, they had to put temporary patches on those, if I read it correctly, just to move it down the channel and get it through the dry dock. So,
and apparently the Battleship Texas Foundation is offering tours of the dry dock on Sundays in November and December, and it's $150 per person for about an hour. Yes, so it's not cheap, but yeah,
everything costs money.
exactly. And obviously they're using it as a fundraiser as well. but wow, you don't realize just how big it actually is until you're up close. And then you kind of think, oh my goodness, it's balanced on blocks. Is it going to roll onto me? And no, it's fine. They got it going. So, okay. So does that answer your question, Sarah? He's got one. Yes. That is the big question. I don't know. Yeah. Some towns are putting forward, I guess, not really pleased, but saying, hey, you know, we'd like to take it. We'd like to have it in. So I think it's Beaumont, Baytown, and Galveston are the three places I've heard as possibilities for it to end up. I don't know when they're going to make their decision as to where it's going to end up, but I think they need to decide fairly soon, because once it's done with all the rehab, they'll have to pay for it to continue in dry dock if they don't have a place for it.
And if you've ever been to any of the other sites, like where the USS Alabama is in Mobile, the Missouri is out in Pearl Harbor, you've got to put facilities in place to dock that thing. It's just not like pulling up a sailboat. I mean, they've got to have infrastructure in place, parking lots, you know.
And running the whole air conditioning and the lights and the everything. So, and a budget. And it needs to be somewhere where it's going to get a lot of tourist visitation, right? That's the big thing. It needs that. So I don't know. As soon as I hear, I will let you guys know. But so far, your guess is as good as mine. Oh, anything else?
One more, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah. Oh, no.
Well, so in our area, I have noticed that there's been some work happening at Goliad. Could you talk about that, Eleanor?
Okay, so Goliad is not actually in my region, but I contacted my colleague in Goliad to say, hey, what's going on? Because they have recently let a contract out because they have acquired a new plot of land that is rumored to be one of the locations of one of the Fannin massacre sites, possibly. And
Maybe this weekend, last weekend, TPWD had invited some metal detectors to go down and
okay, I don't know. Yeah.
look for something.
Okay, because I know that a
I
Terracon.
heard that about a month ago.
Okay, well, apparently Terracon is at the point where they've done all their background research and they're about to head into the fieldwork phase of the project. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. So yeah, I don't know what they're going to find. You know, I think there's a lot of places that are rumored to be Fannin massacre sites, but hey, you know, this could be one. I guess the fieldwork and the investigations are going to let us know for sure. And even if we don't find the Fannin massacre site, hey, at least we'll learn a lot about the site and how it can be used in future, right? Yes. Yes, it's right beside McFadden Beach, like literally right beside McFadden Beach. However, you know how McFadden Beach, somewhere offshore, there's a very large prehistoric archaeological site, and every time there's a storm, stuff washes up on the beach. It tends to go kind of that way. It doesn't, you know, the way the wave action is, stuff ends up on McFadden Beach, it doesn't end up in Sea Room. But I've done trainings with the staff out at Sea Room to watch out for cultural resources. So they're keeping an eye on things. And if there's another big storm, I'll definitely be going out and walking up and down the beach to take a look for myself.
I heard they're trying to deter people from doing, good luck with that.
Yeah. And I think
Probably like one park ranger and, 100 miles of
a beach. Yeah. McFadden Beach is quite large. Yes. And it's a very popular beach too. So I don't know. Yeah. I haven't heard of anything being discovered from there in a while, but I know in the past they have.
cleaning that beach up for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
We've seen some of the collections.
Smart. Okay, that is one way to stop that right in its tracks. Yes. Yeah, that is one of the things that we're definitely pushing in state parks is conservation of resources. And if you see something, leave it where it is. Go and tell someone.
If you're not familiar with McFadden Beach, during the last ice age, the Texas coastline extended out well over 100 miles further south into the Gulf of Mexico. So you can imagine there are Native American sites all over the place down there for thousands of years. Now they're underwater, so every time you get any kind of a tropical storm,
Things will wash up.
pushing the tide in, and then it washes back out. It's leaving everything there on the beach, in the dunes, in the vegetation back in there.
Mhm.
And these folks have been finding that. And not only that, but you're finding shark's tooth, teeth, and stuff like that out there. Some paleo stuff also. So
Yeah, possibilities for research. Yes.
anything else?
Anything
Anybody?
else?
Well, thank you.
Okay, well, you're very welcome.
Appreciate it.